You signed the Paris Climate Accord proudly with your granddaughter sitting on your lap. In April 2016, you got everyone to sign up, and then the Trump administration in 2017 took them out of the agreement and saying that America was at a disadvantage. How disappointed were you?
Well, I'm disappointed when a president of the United States lies, and that was a lie. There's no burden. Paris did not place outside burdens levied by any other country on any other country. The beauty of Paris is that it asked every country to design its own approach. Maybe that's a beauty because it's the only way you could get an agreement. It's also a deficit because it doesn't mean you're necessarily going to do what you need to do, which is exactly where we are. But the fact is that the program the United States undertook, we worked out working with the Chinese. I went to China, I negotiated with President Xi. We got the Chinese to agree to finally break this impasse where the G77 were always at loggerheads with the developed world. And we got them to agree, because it was in their interest, to make a plan that was realistic and the best we could get, put it that way. We designed our own plan. So when the president says it puts a burden on us, no, we are assuming a de minimis level of what we ought to be doing. And the burden that is being put on the people of the world, as well as the United States, is the burden of ignorance to science, which is turning away from something as reasonable as what we did in Paris. Only the United States has pulled out. Only Donald Trump has pulled out. Because the truth is that in the United States, 38 states and their governors have renewable portfolio laws, which they are implementing, and they're working towards Paris. More than 1,000 mayors have committed. Every major city in America is continuing to try to achieve the Paris goals. Here's the problem. The Paris goals we knew when we left Paris are not enough to get the job done. What we were betting on in Paris is we're going to excite the private sector. The private sector is going to see the biggest market the world has ever seen. It's called the energy market. Why is that important? Because the solution to climate change is energy policy. So we were trying to excite investment where, the next Elon Musk, the next Sergey Brin, the next Bill Gates, whatever, is going to discover battery storage, which is a complete game changer for all energy production because people will then really go solar. The problem is it's not happening. It's not happening enough. And even in Katowice recently, you saw the fight that was taking place just to be able to try to be reasonable here. We're heading towards 4 degrees centigrade increase in this century. And the passive indifference that most countries are accepting is basically a mutual suicide pact. That's what people are on right now, because we are not doing what is necessary to save the planet. It sounds enormous, sounds dramatic, draconian. It's real, folks. This is what scientists are telling us. And they told us recently in a report, we have exactly 12 years to try to prevent the worst consequences of an additional 0.5 degrees over that period of time. So, we've really got to sound alarm bells even more. We've got to look for political leadership that wants to adopt what is staring us in the face, which is energy efficiency, alternative, renewable, sustainable energy. All these things are doable.
But Secretary Kerry, you're calling your own President Trump a liar.
No, I'm just quoting the Washington Post, which has literally chronicled over 7,000 lies. The New York Times has chronicled over 7,000 lies. So everybody knows this every day.
That speech that he made to take the US out of the Paris Climate Accord and the reasons why he gave that the US were disadvantaged, are you saying that that's...
That was not true. It was just not true. What the president said was not true. There is not a burden placed on us by any other country. United States experts, scientists, people, Rebecca, all the NGOs, businesses, by the way, ExxonMobil, Google, Apple, all the major corporations of our country went to Paris and said, you need to do this. So major business signed on, the Chamber of Commerce signed on. And against all of that advice and against all the other 195 plus or so countries that have signed on, Donald Trump alone has decided that he knows better and has gotten out of it.
Are you holding him solely responsible?
No, it's not just, it's not he alone, no. But I'm holding the indifference of political leadership in our country, certainly, and elsewhere, to do what is necessary. The greatest job creator in the world today is the energy market. The fastest growing job in America today is solar wind turbine technician and solar power installer. We have about 300,000 of them now. We have about 50,000 or so people who are involved in the coal industry. So there are many, many more people who already are dependent on jobs. And yet President Trump is busy trying to bring back the dirtiest fuel on the planet, which is creating 3/4 of the problem we have today. So I'm faulting political leadership. And yes, I wish there was a lawsuit capacity that could hold people liable for such an insane decision as he has made, which is going to cost lives. People will die because of the president's decision, and billions of dollars of damage will be done to property as a result of our not moving fast enough to do what is necessary to avoid the worst consequences.
Secretary Kerry, I have to bring in now, I mean, at the moment, there isn't a government. It's the longest shutdown in US history. What do you make of that?
It's a massive failure of our democratic process to work functionally, to function effectively. It represents a stubbornness of that is almost childish, except the consequences are obviously enormously severe. I mean, we have people now who are working for the federal government ostensibly, or driving Uber, or finding part-time jobs, who can't pay their bills. It's utterly disgraceful, utterly disgraceful.
Are you embarrassed by it?
Of course I'm embarrassed by it. You know, it's embarrassing for our government. It's embarrassing for our country.
Will you run in 2020?
No, we're not doing politics here.
Well, we were. I think you were just talking politically, but
well,
if you feel so
I don't think I'm talking
Kerry,
politically. I think I think a lot of what I've just said here is pretty.
Would you consider running in 2020?
I've told people I have not taken it off the table, but I'm not sitting around actively planning a campaign or doing something, no.
And just with that final word then, Secretary Kerry, if you had President Trump sitting right opposite you, what would your message to him be?
I can't play that. I would... but I know that, you see, because he doesn't take any of this seriously. He doesn't have an ability to have that kind of conversation.
What would you say to him to get it serious? What would your message be?
Resign.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you to my panel, Peter Thompson from the United Nations, Rebecca Shaw from WWF, and Secretary John Kerry.